John Delaney was one of the other points that we wanted to come back to. It does feature in a lot of the newspapers this morning. Philip Quinn is the one that's in front of me here. UEFA keeping quiet over Delaney under-17 finals role to kick off in Dublin this day next week. He's the chairman of the UEFA Youth and Amateur Football Committee, and so by the nature of that role clearly would be expected to turn up to some of these games. Now, he's on gardening leave. The executive vice president is on gardening leave from the FAI and not entitled to turn up to any official duties. So whether that includes UEFA duties or not remains to be seen, actually, which I was just taken slightly by surprise with today, that doesn't yet been any utterances from UEFA. They have been asked, they haven't made any comment on it, but surely they've got surely somewhere they must have some sort of a protocol about gardening leave from your association results in this.
I wouldn't be thinking so much of the protocol as why would John Delaney want to be there? You know, I know we're used in this country to have politicians with brass necks and sports administrators with brass necks, people like Pat Hickey. But what's in it for John Delaney being there? You know, if you know that everybody, there's a potential for fans to be booing him, for Delaney out signs being held up again. He's going to be walking around shaking hands with people who have quite likely seen his performance in front of the Oireachtas committee, who've read the stories that the Sunday Times have been breaking. Why would you want to be? Isn't there 1,000? I mean, he's talking about gardening leave. Wouldn't you rather be gardening? Wouldn't you rather be anywhere in the world than in a football stadium? I don't understand it. I mean, he's got to have huge self-belief if he thinks he's going to come back from this. Like, if he thinks that in 5 years' time he'll be looking back on this as just a blip in his career and he'll still be sitting in the FAI behind a desk, I don't think the politicians are going to allow that to happen. I think Delaney is dead in the water. Why he would put himself in a position where he's sort of standing in a ground like this, like watching football. I mean, I can't understand that mentality.
And I mean, I think that's why you and I are not the CEO of leading sporting organisations. That I think that there will be an element of ego, that this is a mini tour de force, that I've secured this tournament for this country, and I ought to be there, I deserve to be there, and I will be there. And if he takes that with him into retirement, like if that, he's only young, he's only 51, you know, I mean, he's got a lot of years left, but I think if he's forced out of the FAI, he won't be leaving saying, well, at least I was there for the under-17 tournament. I mean, that won't be part of the narrative, you know. And it's kind of hard. I mean, I look at John Delaney. I knew John reasonably well in, around sort of 2001, 2002, when I was a sports writer with the Sunday Tribune. And John looked like he was the coming man in sports administration. I mean, he was fantastic. I mean, he spoke sense on the Aircon Park issue. You know, he had all the figures worked out. He showed that this was not feasible. You know, the FAI building a stadium of their own in West Dublin was not feasible, and the sensible thing was to go in with the IRFU and to have a stadium within walking distance of Dublin city centre. The Saipan issue, when Brendan Menton, I think wasn't really a strong voice during that time during Saipan, and John Delaney stepped forward and did prime time and did the 6-1 news, did all those things. Yeah. And you looked at him and you thought, this guy, he was only in his late 20s or maybe early 30s, and you looked at him and you thought, this guy's special. So to see him, I mean, I haven't seen John for years and years, but to see him now become that guy, the huge salary, the six-figure salary, and they say you have to pay these big salaries if you want to get the best people, but unfortunately for the FAI, they don't get the best people. They just pay the big salary. To see him, having all of his bills paid by the FAI, to see him sitting in front of an Oireachtas committee, refusing to answer questions, essentially pushing this young guy forward to answer questions for him, a guy who's been there for a few weeks. 2 weeks, I think, yeah.
And to see how nervous he was, under this enormous public scrutiny, and Delaney sitting there silently. And then when the question was asked, who's that guy sitting behind you? And somebody answers for Delaney, it's his legal advisor, and no name is offered. I mean, this stuff you couldn't have believed it of Delaney 17 or 18 years ago, and it's sad to see that he's just become that figure, you know, that he's just been, when I look at him, I just think, what a disappointment, you know.
Yeah. And there's time to play out in the jet as well. It's, as you say, the Sunday Times, obviously every week has something new and some developments there as well. One development I do want to touch on that story before we leave it was from John Fallon in the Times Ireland edition this morning, writes about an approach from the FAI to Brian Kerr and to Des Casey that Cole's been put in. They'd like them to appear at some games. Brian Kerr has some interesting things to say about it. I mean, it's a sad. I mean, it's one of the sad things about Irish football. It happens in rugby as well, that you've got, you know, people like Eddie O'Sullivan and just Declan Kidney
that once you get to the top is seen as becoming the manager of the national team, and then once you've done that and you've failed at that at the end, you've nothing left to contribute. And that was the case with Kerr. I mean, Kerr, the FAI should have found a role for Kerr after he stopped being Ireland manager, but I know there was a personality clash between Delaney and Kerr. They weren't fans of each other, but Kerr was pushed out, ostracised. And I think from this story, it says that he lost his tickets to international matches.
Yes, he did.
That's a terrible thing. I mean, this is a man who brought Ireland great success at underage level, who's one of the best football brains in the country, and he has to buy tickets like I have to buy tickets. You know, I mean, that's terrible. But there's clearly some effort to get him and Des Casey. I mean, I haven't been aware of Des Casey for a few years, but they're clearly trying to get sort of some of the old faces back on side. And I think probably having Brian Kerr's face in the crowd at the under-17s would be a smart thing to do for the FAI, because it looks like this new era they're talking about has Kerr's imprimatur. So that's clearly what they are, and very, very smartly Brian Kerr put the phone down on them, presumably after telling them exactly what he thought of it.